Good afternoon, welcome to the Health and Wellbeing Board on this grimy day. We haven't got too chocker agendas, so you can get back out in the wet in a short while, I imagine. We just start off with the formal parts of the agenda. Have we got any apologies, Jenny?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Carol Patterson, Steve Brennan, Rachel Spencer-Henshaw, Liz Town-Andrews, Izzy Worsack and Stacey Appleyard.
Does anybody else have any apologies to share? Great. And can we move the minutes of the last meeting as a correct record? Could somebody move those? Warren? And somebody second? Vicky? Everybody's in favour of that. Nobody's got any issues with them. Great. Does anybody have any interest to declare? All good. Today's agenda is all public, so everything will be held in public and is being streamed live. And do we have any deputations or petitions, Jenny?
None received, Chair.
Or any public questions?
Yeah, none received.
Great. That takes us on to our first item for real, as it were. And has anybody got any partner updates to share? Anything happening in your organisation that we've talked about that you want to let us know about? Any of that great work where you're getting the healthy involvement of staff in activities and such that we all like to think as big employers we can lead the way on? None today. I know Mid Yorks were going to come and share with us a brief introduction to the fact that I think it's their 150th anniversary. Just in time. I just mentioned the name. Brent, could you pop down to a microphone and just tell us what big news you've got that's happening this year for you, just as an introduction, and we'll hear more about it in the coming months.
Oh yeah. Hello everybody. I'm a slightly wet and breathless Brent Kilmurray from Mid Yorkshire. In terms of just sort of things that are coming up for the...
Well, we're doing the partner updates, but I know you've got a big year ahead in one way, definitely.
Yeah, we've got lots going on. Obviously at Mid Yorkshire, clearly we're clearing winter and getting through the final quarter of this financial year. But looking ahead, we're planning some work to do some engagement around looking at the configuration of services across the 3 sites. We're obviously celebrating 150 years of Dewsbury Hospital, Staincliffe. So some big events planned to highlight some of the services that we're providing there, celebrate the history, get the community involved. So there's quite a number of kind of key schemes that will be as part of that, and hoping that colleagues from around here can be involved in it, as well as thinking about looking forward and looking at our clinical strategy for the next 5 to 10 years. So quite a lot to do this year.
That's brilliant, Brent. So a very big year for you. I'll get a couple whilst we get... But yes, so if people can engage with that, that'll be great. What a wonderful thing to have 150 years of Dewsbury Hospital on the cards, alongside all the configurations into the future. On our part as a board, next meeting we're going to be looking, and I've already sent out an email to ask about your thoughts on how the board will go forward in the new structure, but particularly with a view to our membership of the board, because we have a very strong input from health partners. But what I'm looking at is the point that it's about health and well-being, and particularly when we're looking into the future as neighbourhood working, we need to think about what parts of that structure need to have a voice on the Health and Wellbeing Board. So at the next meeting, we will have an informal session where we'll look forward, and hopefully with some input from potentially the ICB, on where we might stand as a Health Wellbeing Board. I know it's not firm and that, but we are producing the Health and Wellbeing Strategy. That's starting now. You'll hear more about that a little bit later on. So if anybody's going to be involved in the board, it's important that they have their eyes over what's happening producing the strategy, because coming in afterwards and then commenting on things is a bit like closing the closing the gate when the horse bolted. So if you do want to send any emails in to myself and Lucy, I did send one out asking for any ideas and thoughts going forward. Please do share those with us so that we can have some idea what's on the cards for that informal session, and we can build some things around that. Right, agenda item number 8, and we have Stuart, Head of Children's Commissioning, is going to tell us about the local area SEND inspection response and the Big SEND 1526 Plan Part 3.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's quite a mouthful, isn't it? So thank you for inviting us today. I'm here with my colleague Adrian Wisniewski, who will be presenting part of this with me today. So just to recap then, so this is the third now a series of SEND big plans, and that's special educational needs and disabilities for children and young people aged 0 to 25. So we have an ongoing SEND transformation plan, which is how we are working as a partnership to improve provision and outcomes for children. But this particular iteration of the plan is on the back of our SEND area inspection, which took place in June last year. So this was a combined Ofsted and CQC inspection of all provisions in Kirklees which support children with SEND. So that included schools, the local authority, health providers, ICB, and many more. So following that inspection, we had a verdict of we provide inconsistent support for children and young people. So that meant that we had some areas of improvement that we expected to address, and that was formalised in the inspection report. So that gave us 4 areas to improve, which we'll talk about later. So what we're here today for is then to just to talk about how this plan will look and what's involved and what's the ask of partners and the whole system. So we're looking for how we can bring about some systemic change and to make these improvements. We did come to a previous board with an early draft of the plan. The reason for that was that we only had a very short period of time to submit a plan back to the inspectors. So we're here today with some more detail just to fill that in. So I'll hand over to her to talk a little bit about how we got here.
So as you told us previously, keep doing the things you do well. Keep going with that, and that's why we've adopted the same format as his previous big plans. And that's also had positive feedback both from the inspectors and from the DFE, and it's been seen as national innovation and good practice. It is, as you expect, Yorkshire. Keep it short. Say what you mean what you say, I believe is a phrase, isn't it? So what we thought we'd do today is just quickly take you through some of the detail of the plan. As you can see, it is absolutely signed up to by the partners. We did have a very tight timescale in order to move it forward. Having said that, as you'll see as we get through the plan, this isn't a new piece of work, is it? We've been working on this together for quite some time. So yet again, we're building on the things that we already know and that you've told us. So what we did is we followed a very, very similar format to the previous big plans. One, because it has gone down so well, and 2, because it felt to be logical. And the first part of that is most people want to know when they're reading the document, why do I need to bother? What's in it for me? Why should I read it? So we've kept that really short and sharp. The next part that we realised is that although we live and breathe it, not everybody necessarily is close to what a local area SEND inspection is. So we've tried to keep that really short. Next question that people logically gave us was, so how is this different? You've already got 2 big plans, what's all this about? And as Stuart's already said, our first big plan was that overview of the 5-year strategy. As young people said to us, don't call it strategy because that doesn't really mean anything to us, it's your big plan. The big plan part 2 then was more detail about the first year of that, and then this big plan 3 is really about, so what are we going to do in response to that SEND inspection together? The next part, as you can see, was really about, so who is this for? And again, why you? And we are fortunate in Kirklees that the partnership has got so many incredibly passionate people who deliver a difference on a daily basis. Does that mean everything's perfect? Well, of course not. You know, we know there's a lot of work still to do, but there's an awful lot of people, you know, working so hard on a daily basis. The inspection, as Stuart already said, told us a number of things. One of the things it told us is we know ourselves You know, there's no surprises in here. You know about this. You know where you're at. You know where your strengths are. You know where your weaknesses are, and you're doing things about it. But there is more work to do. So within that, they did tell us that our leaders are highly ambitious for children, that we do create things together. They were extremely positive about the role that Pecan, our parent carer group, plays. They must say, without wishing to embarrass them, they are excellent. They give us an extreme challenge at times, but they do it in a way where we can absolutely hear what's trying to tell us and help us move forward. They also are heavily involved within the detail of the work as well. So we don't just come to them later on and say, is this all right? They're actually involved in helping us shape the work to start with. The areas, as Stuart already mentioned, that they told us that we needed to focus on were around preparing for adulthood, then into communication, waiting times, and, as you'd expect, the education and healthcare plans. In terms of building the report, as we mentioned before, one of the things that people have already told us numerous times, if you've asked us about this before, we've told you. Can you crack on? So we've taken all the things that they've already told us in order to build into the action plans. One of the things that they did tell us is don't give us a huge action plan with lots of lines on an Excel spreadsheet, because I just want to know simply and clearly what are you going to do and when are you going to do it. So that's why we've followed the same roadmap approach that we've done in the past. And that brings us nicely into the first of those.
Thank you. So, as it's just described, we took a tried and tested format, and we found the visual aspect of a roadmap quite successful. So each of the 4 actions has a roadmap which looks similar and shares the same format. So we have a white box which always talks about the governance process and how we can tell it makes a difference, how we're going to make sure things happen. And we've got the coloured boxes which are banded into seasons, which are the landmarks along the way. So we chose the approach of using seasons rather than hard dates, partly because it gives us a bit of flexibility as a partnership to achieve things, but also it's recognising that these are big actions that are quite wide-ranging. So behind it there is a detailed plan which does have all the lines on the spreadsheet as you might expect and some harder dates, but to present it for partnership and public consumption, this felt like a more successful way to do it. It's also important to note that the plan is a long-term plan, and the inspection team were quite clear with us with this when we were talking about how to address these issues. They're not expecting everything to be solved within 6 to 12 months. So we've been quite sensible, I think, in how we've paced some of the actions that we're taking. So there are some things that we aren't even going to begin until next year and possibly even the year after, and some things that we realise needed action straight away. So the first one that we're going to look at is around preparation for adulthood and how we address some of the inconsistencies there. So we've already started some of the work in the autumn. We've done some of the information gathering, some of the talking to partners and working out what we're going to do. As we move into winter, that's taken more, we've added more detail to that process. A good example of which was a peer review, which was carried out in the last couple of weeks with colleagues from Wakefield and Doncaster, who came in, spent some time with a range of partners in Kirklees to look at how we do things and to come up with some challenge and some suggestions of how we might improve things. So that's given us something to work on. And then as we move through spring and summer, we'll be looking at how we can implement the findings from that peer review and review them with Pecan, DFE, NHS England and our other partners. The next one is a real challenge and one that we were expecting, and I think probably every area in the country will get something to do on this. So this was around waiting times, and in particular waiting times for health services. So this is where it's really important that we consider how things will work in the future in the ICB and the NHS landscape, where we have to make sure that now more than ever before we're working very closely with the health provider partners, and the partners will take a lead on how these actions are shaped and how they're implemented to make sure that we can do as much as we can to ensure that children can access the health services and assessments they need. We did some prioritisation in this work. Some of the areas which are causing most concern and have the longest waits are our CAMS, our Children and Adolescent Mental Health Service, and our Speech and Language Therapy Services. So that's where we're starting. We are trying to, as much as we can, look at the service from a child's perspective rather than a service perspective, if that makes sense. So we're looking at how the outcomes are achieved and what's in the best interest of the child and family, and how we can build things around there. We're quite realistic, and we've said so in our plan, about what we can achieve given the resources that are available to us. So we are saying that we're going to improve things in line with national trajectories rather than make any promises that we can't keep here. So the next one was around education, health and care plans. Now, this is something where we've already made a significant amount of progress from where we were a year, 2 years ago, when we had very long wait times and were achieving very low compliance with the 20-week target time for an EHCP to be issued. So, so this is really just a continuation of work that was already happening. But the main thing that we're looking at really is how we improve the quality of information that's provided as well as the timeliness, and to make sure that we're including information that is relevant and required on the plans. We're also looking at quality assurance process of that, and to improve our reviewing process. We've recognised that's been an area of weakness for us for some time, so that once plans are in place, we don't always review them as quickly as we should do. We are experiencing continuing pressure and high demand for EHCPs, and that's showing no sign of slowing down. We do know that the government is planning to release an SEND white paper in the near future, but we don't know what that will say in terms of EHCPs and what the impact might be. So we can only work with what we know now, and I think we can also work on the assumption that even if changes are coming, that it'll take some time to roll out, so we need to continue to tackle the problem that's in front of us. So as we move through into the spring, then one of the items of note is around information systems and sharing between professionals in particular. So this has always been a bit of a stumbling block around making sure information reaches the right people at the right time. So we've got an addition to our information system, which is effectively a professionals portal. So even people who don't usually have access to that system, so whether it's a health person who can't usually access a local authority system, this provides an interface to provide a better flow of information. There's also, will eventually be a parents portal too, and this will go to some way to us addressing some of the communication issues that we'll come on to in a moment. So one of the frustrations parents tell us about is they just want to know where they are in the system, where they are in a waiting list, what's going to happen and when. So we're looking on a portal where parents can log in, check their progress and find out without having to ring up or worry excessively about it. So that brings us on to communications then, and this is quite a broad category too. So we're talking about communications in a number of different ways. So yes, between the services and parents, but also between professionals and partners as well. We hear that it's difficult for people to feel fully informed about what's going on in different parts of the system, what the developments are. So we're looking at more regular communications. We're looking at improving our local offer for parents so they can find all the information in one place. And we're using sources such as the What Works in Send document, which provides some valuable insight into how we can make these improvements. So in terms of how we are tracking our progress and how we know that we are making a difference with these things, we do have regular scheduled meetings with Department for Education and NHS England. So they will come and give us quite a robust challenge on our plans. We also have some support and advice from those organisations as well. So it's support and challenge that we receive from them. We're committed to providing public updates on the progress at least 4 times a year. And we'll regularly return to Health and Wellbeing Board to provide updates as and when required. In addition to all of this, as SEND is a corporate priority for the local authority, we report to the executive team every 6 weeks. And the governance chart you can see in the diagram in front of you then. So that shows the at the top of the trees, the Health and Wellbeing Board is our ultimate source of governance for this programme. So unless you've got anything more to add, I think that is what we wanted to say today.
I think it was just the recognition that, as we said before, there's an awful lot of great work done, but there's an awful lot more to do. And also when it comes to communication, we know you can never do enough, can you? And we know that until somebody comes to that point in their life where they actually need that particular service, all the communications you do will have passed them by. So we know it's a constant challenge to make and improve on that.
Thank you, Stuart and Adrian. I'm absolutely delighted that you've got a strong focus on communication, because people are always so much happier to wait a bit longer, to manage a bit longer, if they know that everything's okay and it's coming. So I really appreciate, obviously, keeping in touch with us as well, but, you know, the professionals and the families themselves. I'm really, really happy to see that you've continued to have good input from outside, from Pecan and the users themselves, as well as partnership and professionals, obviously. And as you say, on the EHCP changes coming, you can only tackle the problems that you can see in front of you. You don't know what they're going to say. But if you're tackling those problems, and what they suggest isn't to tackle those problems, then you know you'll have to push back on that, because it's the problems that need tackling, isn't it? And you're doing a great job on facing those and continuing good work that you do. Anybody got any questions or comments that they'd like to put to these guys while they're here? Vicky.
Thanks, Chair. It's just to say that this is a really good piece of work and really well accepted across the partnership, and we've been fully engaged in this. I also think, just to echo your points, the engagement and involvement of Pecan was really productive and has been really good throughout the whole process. We recognise there's going to be some challenges moving forward, not just in delivery of the plan, but also due to the organisational changes and impact, but we are sighted on those and working together on them.
Great to hear that everybody's, you know, in a professional capacity welcoming it. But obviously, the experts are the experts, but nobody's more of an expert on what's happening to them than the people themselves and the families close to them. Have you got anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for your time and thank the board for listening. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Keep bringing us updates. We're very interested to see how you progress, and you love the way that you're moving forward. Next item on the agenda, we have changes to the integrated care board landscape, and we have Vicky Dutchburn to bring us an update. I don't know if you've got a lot to update us on at this point, Vicky, or not. We'll see.
Depends how you want to view this. Stop laughing at me, Brent. So I think it's fair to say that there's been a lot of change, and it's moving at pace since the last update that we gave, because I believe when I came last time I did say that the process had been paused until the new financial year, and then we were notified in November that it was all systems go and the pause had been lifted and the government expected us to move forward. So I have brought an update today. What I'm trying to do is also give you an update on some of the progress of the work that we're doing, as well as some of the business as usual as well, because I think it's really important that whilst there's a massive reorganisational change, this isn't just about the ICB ceasing, people leaving the organisations. There is still work to do. So there's 4 key things I'm going to touch on. I do have a set of slides that I will share with Jenny afterwards to circulate that's got more detail for people. But I'm going to briefly cover the update position on organisational change, an update on the place provider partnerships, which are part of the new governance structure that are going to be brought into place. Very briefly, just touch on organisational planning for 26-27, because we are also in the midst of doing that, and that obviously has an impact. And then just very briefly touch upon the neighbourhood plans, which I know there was quite a detailed update last time. So just regarding the organisational change, there's just a couple of things to put back in context for people. So this is part of a much wider change that's happening for the whole of the NHS landscape. So there's the NHS England, DHSC changes that will be taking place at some point. But the Integrated Care Board was told to go live and move quickly. So there's 4 cogs, we're one of the cogs, but we've been told to go first. So a lot of this is done with in that context, to be perfectly honest. I've also touched on previously that across the whole of West Yorkshire, we've currently got circa 1,200 members of staff employed by us, and the changes mean that we're going right down to about circa 600. So that is the scale of the change for the new organisation. Because we got told all systems would go again back in November, a decision was taken by West Yorkshire to offer a voluntary redundancy scheme out to all staff, while we could finalise consultation documents on what will be the proposed new structure. So that went live in November, closed beginning of December, and there are a significant number of staff across West Yorkshire who applied for voluntary redundancy. And there are, to be perfectly honest, a significant number of staff who have been recommended for approval for voluntary redundancy. If those people take it up, that they will start exiting the organisations from next month. So we are going to be seeing major change from next month across the whole landscape. People are still making final decisions, taking legal advice, etc. So there's no firm figures on what that means. However, there is still a significant gap between where we are and where we need to get to, even with people taking voluntary redundancy. On the 14th of January, we opened formal consultation on the structure for our staff. So that went live for all our staff, and there is a whole web page dedicated to this for our staff, which includes consultation document, copies of the proposed structures, copy of the proposed job descriptions, lots of other supporting information for those people to have a look. And we're in a 45-day consultation period now as we speak. Alongside, running parallel to that, obviously anybody who wasn't successful with voluntary redundancy for round 1 can appeal. So the appeals have to be submitted by tomorrow. They had 10 days to submit those. They will all be heard, hopefully, by the 28th of this month. And then on the 30th of this month, there will be a second round of voluntary redundancies opened up to coincide with the consultation process. So that's that element. The future role of the ICB, as we've talked about before, is there's 3 key functions. One is as a strategic commissioner, one is as a convener of the health and social care system, and then the third one is as an integrator within the individual places. So that's where Kirklees Place, Wakefield Place, etc. will have their biggest footprints. So just so people are aware of that. The intention is that from April this year, we will be doing interviews. So consultation will finish at the end of February, deliberation first 2 weeks in March, and then the formal structures will be published. And then at that point, the exec team job descriptions will be advertised with an intention that they will start to be recruited into from the beginning of April, and then it cascades down through the various grades of staff. Right through to the end of June. There's roughly a 2-week window, give or take, so exec directors I think only get a 1 week to do their applications. I think when you get to band 6s and 7s, because that's where our biggest cohort of staff is, they've extended that to 3 weeks. But the intention is that all the interviews will have been completed by the end of June, which then means final people either through voluntary redundancy or compulsory redundancy will exit the organisation between July and October, and from October it will be a new organisation that is implemented and starts. To support that, obviously, there is core functions at West Yorkshire which will take on strategic commissioning, and at Place it will be the integrator functions, which will be much smaller than anybody's ever seen at a place level before, but they will ultimately become part of the new place provider partnership arrangements. And the intention is that through 26-27, the place provider partnerships will be running in shadow form to ensure that we get all the governance, all the transition of staff, things like getting the MOUs, any contracts, etc. that need to transfer in place and robust, that we can do the appropriate governance and due diligence with the providers who may or may not be leading those as we move forward, because we're still waiting for full clarity on the rules that NHS England are going to put around that. And then from April 27, there will be the new entities is the intention, and contracts will be awarded to those providers to move forward. Obviously, within that is the close working with local authorities and other partners as well, with the intention that we build on the good work that we've already been doing. To support all of that, there's obviously massive changes to the governance arrangements. So we are also in the process of changing the current governance arrangements at an ICB level, both at West Yorkshire and at Place. So at West Yorkshire, the West Yorkshire board is going to be a much smaller size board, and it's going to have a streamlined committee structure. And the intention again is that that will come into effect from April 26 and be operating at that, but there will still then be changes that have to take place at the end of 26 into 27 to formalise the final constitutional elements. So it'll be a two-phase process. So that's all the work that we're doing. Obviously, I've mentioned place provider partnerships, and within Kirklees there is an intention that we will have a place provider partnership for Kirklees. And what I will say is that our current providers are working very closely with the ICB, where I suppose taking on the role of a facilitator, convener of that discussion, to try and shape what that will be for the future. And we are moving at pace. I think it's fair to say that we have to move at pace on this. So there's a number of things that we've been working on. We've been working on what the governance may look like, because obviously part of the work that we need to do is at some point cease the existing Kirklees ICB committee. And the intention is that whilst we're running shadow form over the next financial year, there will be a much smaller place committee to take any final decisions that we have to take. So ultimately the ICB will still hold the budget for next year while we move forward. However, what we are expecting as we develop the governance arrangements for the place provider partnership is those discussions and the decision making and the recommendations will be taken by are made by the partnership with the recommendations into the ICB for, I'm going to say, formal sign-off. So that's the approach that we are looking at. So working really closely with our partners, and I do need to extend thanks to people like Brent, Mark Brook, Rob Aitchison, Steve and Michelle, who's been deputising a lot on this, because we wouldn't be moving at the pace that we have been if they weren't part of the work. Key functions that we are looking at is that the model will be co-produced, so we are looking at a co-produced model. We are looking at aligning our workforce, so we're being very clear about what is it that will be in the new structure to be delegated down from West Yorkshire, albeit much smaller, but doing lots of mapping work to see what we really need in Kirklees and from our partners. So there is an opportunity here for us to be doing some transformation, take out duplication. The key things that we will be doing is delivering population healthcare. So our primary focus at this time, whilst we have to have an eye onto what the specialist services, our acute trusts, our mental health trusts will be delivering, is what we want to deliver out of hospital. So that's our community provision, but it's services in the community, not just those that we commission fully. To make sure that we're doing a lot of that work at place, addressing the health inequalities, reaching people as close to home as possible, starting to develop services and pathways in our local communities, but also working closely with our acute trusts and our mental health trusts, etc., to start identifying for future phases any left shift work that we want to do. So all through the work we will be developing our interfaces. I just want to keep reiterating this. What we are trying our best to do is build on the good joint working that we're already doing. We are not intending and trying our best not to destroy what we've got or throw the baby out with the bathwater. It will also be a key function of developing those integrated neighbourhood health teams as well, because they will be a key point. So they're the key things that we are really working on. We have a work plan, we have a risk log for the mobilisation of all of this, and I think it's fair to say it looks scary and it looks daunting. What we are clearly doing, though, is we are working through that collectively, and what we're also doing is sharing with Wakefield and Calderdale to try and learn, not duplicate, to try and get us all into the right place. As I've already said, the governance will change. So the Place Provider Committee will start at the latest from April in its shadow form. They will manage the contracts that we say are in scope as Phase 1 services from April. A big piece of work that we've done as an ICB to support Kirklees in that is this last 12 months we've reviewed all the contracts that were due either to come to an end March this year or even into next year, and we have either set out to re-procure those already or used other legislation that we can to extend contracts, amend contracts, so that we're literally not landing on April the 1st and giving the providers 150 contracts and saying, there you go, get on with it. We are genuinely trying to do this as safely as possible for our populations. What we've also developed is I'm going to say high level. It's not high level, it's very detailed set of metrics that we're going to measure ourselves by to say, actually, have we done what we need to do and to be able to do it safely, which includes all those sorts of things within it. And obviously, the providers that then will be hosting these place providerships at some point over the next 12 months will go through their own due diligence to ensure that this is safe for us to do. So that's all I want to say on place providers at this point. Organisational planning. So obviously, every Christmas we get launched with the organisational planning process from NHS England. This year was no different. It did start a few weeks earlier, which was a bit of a benefit to us. But to be perfectly honest, we are still in the midst of it. So it might have started earlier, but I don't think it's concluding any earlier. And in part, that's due to the fact that NHS England have changed the rules of how they are doing it again this year. So providers are having to submit their plans themselves directly back to NHS England, and the ICBs are having to do a set of plans. The gap that we've got this year is that the plans are not coming via the ICBs for us to do that triangulation on, is the money stacking up with the activity, with the capacity that we've got available. Saying that, one of the things that we are doing across our system is we've put those mechanisms in place ourselves, because we recognise that we might all be submitting things upwards, but if they don't join up, all we're going to do is end up sat in a big room with NHS England or each other having very difficult discussions about how we make this work. So we are all working together on that. We are working together on the metrics that are included. So what we do see in the planning is there are improvement metrics about access to services, A&E attendances, ambulance transfers, also some of our community metrics, access for children's, etc. So we are all working together on those to try and ensure that where possible we are submitting compliant plans. If it's not compliant with the national asks, that we've got a common narrative as to why it's not compliant. And in some cases, I will be perfectly honest, that is about money. It is the financial gap, because we're being told we've got to deliver within a financial envelope. With the stretch targets they've put in, I think we all sit there and say, I'm going to say pie in the sky. It is very difficult to achieve. So we're doing our utmost to deliver that, and again in partnership to be able to do that. So that is another piece of work that we are doing as part of our business as usual. Difficult meetings this week, because we are all in front of NHS England, trying to justify our current positions and sharing that narrative. And final plans are due later on in the month. So we're all on with that and working towards that. And again, I think it's very fair to say, and extending thanks to all the partners, that people are working collaboratively. This has got the real, I'm going to say opportunity, which is the wrong word. It's got the real potential to fragment the way that we work and the way that we deliver services and the way that we collaborate and all of those things that we've done for a significant number of years. And we could end up back to being a them and us, and that we're bickering about things. But our partners I think, and it's testament to the work that we've done in previous years, we are working really collaboratively on this and doing our best to keep those relationships going and taking that consistent united front up the process to NHS England. The final bit is just to touch on the development of neighbourhood health plans. So we've brought previously the work plan for that had the detailed timeline and the phasing of our neighbourhood teams coming together. So the intention is that by the end of summer, all 9 of our planned neighbourhood health teams will be up and running. There were 2 additional teams went live in December, and they went ahead of their schedule, which was really positive. And what we are finding is we are working really collaboratively again across the system, and they are taking learning from each other from each of the neighbourhoods. So we will be on track and we will hit our planned timeline. We will probably be ahead of it because of the pace that people want to move and recognise that. There is some non-recurrent funding has gone into to support that, and we are supporting organisational development within those teams for people to take it forward. And again, that is a real collaborative piece of work. So where we have managed to secure funding, that is not all sat within the ICB. So for example, some of the case workers that were seen as a priority to employ, we've done that joint with local authorities and the community services. So it is a truly collaborative piece of work for that to take place. And then obviously through next year we'll bring more updates to yourself on that, but you will see greater detail in the health and wellbeing plan that we will be bringing back. I think it's about end of February, April time, isn't it, that we'll have to bring that back. So by way of an update, that's where we're at. I will send the slides. There's detail in the slides. Any questions I'm happy to take. I won't guarantee I'll do them straight away when people send me an email. We'll probably be in the midst of everything else, but I'll do my best.
Thank you, Vicky. I really appreciate you giving us these regular updates, because as you keep using the phrase at pace, things are changing massively. I can't imagine for 1 minute this scary, big, absolute change was what you were imagining when you first took on the role, and I bet you don't feel new at all anymore. Very embedded and working closely with people. I'm really, really pleased to hear that you're so collaborative, and that the partners, especially from the council point of view, from myself, that the councils on the council partners are working so closely with you. Glad to hear the ones out in the acute services and etc., that everybody's on board, because that is one thing that will be devastating for us, for the users as well, if those strong partnerships got fragmented in a process that is meant to improve at neighbourhood level. I've just realised what I haven't done earlier on is go around the room and introduce people. So before people ask questions, so people are a bit clear who's in the room, I will do that. Obviously, I'm Councillor Addy in the chair. And to my right, we've got a lady we all know and appreciate, Jenny Bryce-Chan, who supports the committee. But we do have 2 people on the top table at the moment. Jodie, what's your surname?
Jodie Harris, Governance Officer.
And Jodie's in training, aren't you? Get to take over in this place. That's why we've got 2 people with me on the top table today. If we work around from you in Horseshoe, Warren, then just say who you are and where you're from, just so that we've got that on the record.
Yeah, I'm Warren Gillibrand. I'm the Dean of the School of Human Health Sciences in the University of Huddersfield, so therefore representing the university, and I'm also the Vice Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board.
Hi, I'm Catherine Riley. I'm from Calderdale and Huddersfield NHS Foundation Trust.
Hi, James Cregan from Kirklees and Calderdale Care Association, representing independent private BCSEs providers of adult social care.
Good afternoon, I'm Victoria Vallens. I'm Deputy Chief Exec and Exec Director for Services and Professionals from Locala.
Afternoon, Vicky Dutchburn. I'm the Accountable Officer and the Place Lead for Kirklees.
Afternoon, everybody. Michelle Cross, Exec Director for Adults and Health, Kirklees Council.
Hello, I'm Ryan Hunter, the Assistant Director of Strategy and Change at Swift.
Brent Gilmurray, Chief Executive at Mid Yorkshire Teaching Trust.
Lucy Wearmouth, Head of Improving Population Health.
At Kirklees Council. Yes, just because people can't see, we can see who's in the room, people online can't see who's in the room, but we also can't see that I have got, Alistair, do you want to come in online?
Yes. Hi everyone. Hi, it's Alistair Brown, Chief Executive with Kirklees Active Leisure and representing third sector leaders.
Thank you, Alistair. Just because when we're on presentations and that doesn't show up. So if has anybody got any questions for Vicky at this point? I know quite a lot of you will be working with us, so... Too comprehensive an update there, Vicky. We've got no questions for you. As I say, I'm really glad that the partnerships are working well. Please keep coming back for any support we can give from the council point of view. We look forward to a fantastic transition and some more updates into the future. Again, you know, we've got the health and wellbeing strategy coming here, so we're keen to hear what's happening so that we can work within that. But thanks for all your hard work so far. Next on the agenda, we have got an update on the Kirklees Health and Wellbeing Strategy, but I'm mindful to take a 2-minute break just so people can freshen the cups and nip out for a comfort break. So we'll come back at 5 to 7 minutes. Welcome back after our short break, and we'll continue with the agenda. Agenda item number 10, and that is the update on the Kirklees Health and Wellbeing Strategy, and that will be introduced by Lucy Wearmouth.
Good afternoon. I'll just share my slides. Hold on. Okay, so I'm just here to give you a brief update on the Health and Wellbeing Strategy. As you'll remember, Rachel came to Health and Wellbeing Board back in September to give you all a bit of an update on a mid-term review which we conducted informally of the Health and Wellbeing Strategy, but just wanted to talk things through with you more formally today about the next steps which we're planning in and amongst all of the work which Vicky obviously outlined, so very kind of conscious of the systems picture at the minute as well. So what I'll do today is just provide a bit of context for the refresh, and then hopefully at a very top level try and explain the differences between the health and wellbeing strategy versus the health and care plan, and then the emerging neighbourhood health plan, just to be clear about the differences between those strategies, give you a timeline for the strategy development, and then talk you through how the stakeholder engagement will work. Okay, so as you'll already know, the current health and wellbeing strategy ends in 2027. Rachel brought the midpoint review to you in September. The strategy remains a statutory requirement, and that obviously the Health and Wellbeing Board is responsible for the implementation of, and it remains one of our top 4 partnership strategies for the partnership. Setting in and amongst this is all of the systems change which Vicky has kind of outlined for us today. So conscious of how we manage the reviewing and the update of the health and wellbeing strategy in line with all of those changes as well. I have spoken to some of board members around your feedback really on the current strategy in terms of just the opportunities for it, how you found it so far in the past 3-4 years, and also how you think it could potentially change for the future. I've not met with all of you yet, so if I have not got anything in, then I will be kind of chasing you to get that feedback from yourselves. So I've done it like this because I need things in boxes, because I get confused about the differences between different strategies. So Vicky, I'm sure you'll correct me if things are incorrect. So this is just a visual for me to hopefully outline the role of the health and wellbeing strategy in and amongst the emerging neighbourhood health plan. So the health and wellbeing strategy sits kind of at the top, providing that overarching strategic vision for Kirklees. It provides the vision for improving population health, and then defines the long-term priorities. So it's, I think, probably quite a short and sweet strategy that sits on top of the operational stuff underneath. We've also got the health and care plan, which will evolve into the neighbourhood health plan, and I've just provided some details here on the differences between those, and then what the current neighbourhood health plan aims to do. But Vicky, did you have anything you wanted to add to that slide in terms of what I've said? Okay. So this is the timetable for the strategy development. So September this year, we'll do the stakeholder engagement. That's from September through to January 27. That will obviously include yourselves as board members, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. And then we'll come back to Health and Wellbeing Board with those findings from the engagement in March and April 27, and then use all of that feedback to develop the new version of the Health and Wellbeing Strategy in June 27. And then finally, in October 27, we'll bring it to yourselves for the approval. So in terms of the next steps, just a bit about the first step, which is around the engagement with partners. So what we're imagining that it will include, but obviously we're seeking your feedback on this as well, is your feedback on the current strategy, what are the opportunities of that strategy that we have already, but where do you think we could potentially make changes to improve that, including some intelligence around what we already know. It would be useful for us to have some key principles for how we develop that strategy, so looking to develop those principles with yourselves, thinking about the known challenges within Kirklees as well as the strengths and assets and gaps, and then thinking about your own strategic priorities within your own organisations but also across the partnership as well. In terms of stakeholders to include, that will obviously be yourselves as Health and Wellbeing Board members, and then key partners, other forums and other identified groups, but also I'll be seeking your feedback really on where else you think that needs to go to in terms of stakeholder engagement. And that's it. So really it was just to give you that overall and then just to get feedback from yourselves about anything.
Thank you, Lucy. That's great. And lots happening, but we've got quite a way to go and lots of time to do it in. Has anybody got any questions for Lucy or, feedback right now, or Brent?
Looks like a good approach and a fairly sensible process. I'm just interested in how you capture some of the diversity of the area. Kirklees obviously is quite a diverse area, isn't it, in terms of the different towns and villages and settlements, as well as, I guess, the different sorts of communities. It's about, I suppose, how we might identify those different needs and your approach to engagement.
Do you want to come back, Lucy, or anything?
Yeah, definitely. I think that will be a really important part of the engagement and making sure that we do have that diversity recognised there. So I guess I'd be looking to Health and Wellbeing Board to provide some steer about how you think the best approach to that would be. Unless you've got any comments you wanted to make now.
Well, I know that, I was mentioned when I spoke earlier, we're going to be doing a big piece of work internally around our clinical strategy, and we're going to be probably pursuing different conversations with the same people. So there is probably something about how we might, align and work together on that.
Great. Always glad to hear people working together and not duplicating, but also, sharing all that good practice. I've got Alistair online.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Addy, and thanks, Lucy, for that useful update. I think it's really useful to learn from the existing strategy, because I think while it's good, the existing strategy, and has some good principles, I think some of us, maybe all of us, would be a bit frustrated about how much it's progressed, what difference it's actually made to the communities across Kirklees. So I think it's really good that we are reviewing it and looking at refreshing it. I do also wonder if it would be useful if a Health and Wellbeing Board subgroup could also support Lucy, you and the team, because it's quite challenging, I think, having it just at the main board meetings, and certainly I'd be more than happy to help from a third sector point of view and try and work in between the meetings and try and get something that's truly co-produced, if we can do.
Yes, I'd really like to see that too, Lucy, because we always say that the meetings are about coming back and regrouping, but the actual work goes on in between, and that's not just work individual partners work, it's working together outside of the meeting, things that Vicky's referenced that work so well, and always like to hear that. So if you have some ideas, Lucy, for ways that the board partners can not just work individually with you, and maybe have some collaborative co-production meetings that are not really Health and Wellbeing Board meetings, but bring together partners that can look at the strategy.
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. Definitely. Obviously, I only outlined the kind of key steps of the strategy development, but welcome your offer. And then also colleagues from Health and Wellbeing Board, if you have colleagues from within your own organisation who you'd like to be involved, I'd definitely be grateful for that.
Any further comments at this time? Nope. I know you'll all be in touch with Lucy, because I hear her say she's already put out for engagement, but it's very early doors. So please do voice it. Sometimes people ask why we go into informal sessions and we're going to have one at the next meeting. Sometimes that's just so you can bandy about ideas, you can be a bit fanciful and fantasy land and then bring it back to reality. You can, you can express things a bit more widely and not be pinned down to the structures of the absolute. So it's great to have those thinking times. And so please do get in touch with Lucy and make sure you share. I think it's a great time for us to be refreshing. It's a really good time to be refreshing the strategy because we're working alongside the changes in the NHS, things such as Mid York's clinical strategy, the neighbourhood plan. We'll hopefully be able to have our eyes over those coming together as we're looking at the strategy going forward, but we will be hearing lots more about that. As I said, at the next meeting, I'm hoping we will be able to have an informal session. I'd hope that as many board members can be there as possible because I am a big fan of co-production and collaboration. This is a key partnership board across Kirklees, and it's really important that the partners have the oversight on what is going to happen with the board into the future, how we develop, what we become, because we've always been saying that the board should have more teeth, it should have more impact, and so how we do that going forward is important, but we need as many people there as possible to decide that and to look at what other partners we might need to make sure they're truly able to represent this neighbourhood working, neighbourhood level and well-being, not just health, because getting a doctor's appointment is fantastic, but if you're going home and living in hell, it's no good at all, is it? You're just going to keep going round and round in circles. On that note, I'll just tell you that next meeting will be my last meeting in the chair in March. I'm not standing for re-election and it's all-out elections in Kirklees, so that will be my last chance to discuss this with you. So please bring your A game. I want to hear you all punching hard and making some good input. So one of the key parts of that meeting will be that development session. If anybody got anything else that they want to add at this point, I will wrap us up. So that is the end of the meeting. Quite a short one today.